Hey everyone, Fletch here. So earlier this year, I was working on another Pokemon challenge in my spare time, the name of which I'll actually save for another day, when I found a neat little video pop up in my recommended. It happened to be this video by Johnstone. How easily can you complete Professor Oak's challenge in Pokemon Red and Blue? So after watching this video, I started reading into the various challenges others had accomplished in the other mainline games, thanks to the r/Professor Oak subreddit of course. But this got me thinking, could I do this in two of my favorite Pokemon games, Pokemon Coliseum and XD Gale Darkness? Now maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, so let's back up real quick. Let me break down this challenge real quick for anyone who doesn't know the rules. The main objective of this challenge, the Professor Oak challenge, is you need to follow the words of Professor Oak, and what this means is you need to fill up the Pokédex as much as you can. Pretty straightforward. However, the key part is that you need to fill this Pokédex up before you move on to the next badge in the game. This means that you need to catch and evolve every possible Pokemon you can find before moving on to the next point. In Pokemon XD, instead of using badges as our checkpoint for the Professor Oak challenge, we'll instead be using the admins, which are the bosses of this game. So for today's video, instead of the badges of course, we'll be breaking this game up into about 5 different sections. Technically a 6th one, but we'll get to that when we get there. We have Lavrina, Exel, Snaddle, Gorgon, and Greevil. And then technically a 6th one I'm going to call post-game, but it's very short, so let's not worry about that just yet. And you can think of these sections as our badges like I said. So now with our sections defined, let's just go ahead and begin the challenge. I know I haven't mentioned what Shadow Pokemon and what Purifying is, but I think it'll be easier to explain while we're playing the game. We start the game off in what looks to be a stadium with a level 50 Salamence. Pretty cool, right? Well, then you realize the simulation ends and you're actually in the middle of the Pokemon lab of this game. Once you get out of that, you're quickly tasked with finding your sister Jovi, which happens to be playing at a nearby neighbor, which happens to be Dr. Kaminko's manor, and he's a pretty interesting guy to say the least. Anyways, after you make your way over there, you're greeted with your first true battle of this game, against Chobin. You send out your first Pokemon, Eevee, that you already had. After beating Chobin, you find Jovi and take her back home. As you return, the professor wants to show you something pretty cool. As you talk to the professor, he says that the snag machine was created in order to steal Pokemon from another trainer in battle, but he says this was created to help combat shadow Pokemon, and as he's talking, he goes ahead and gives you this machine to try on. As you're trying it on, he leaves the room, and then Team Cypher comes in and takes him. As you run out of the building, you are then greeted by Team Cypher, and you then challenge your first Team Cypher member, named Naps, who then sends out a Teddiursa, what happened to be the first Shadow Pokemon you'll see. So with our snag machine we just received, we're able to use it and chuck some Pokeballs at this Teddiursa and catch it, and this would be our true first Pokemon caught of the run. I say it's my first one since we were already given EB before the game technically started. I guess I'm going to mention now, you're going to want to save every once in a while while you're playing XD, especially this first section, because at this point you're not able to rebattle any of these trainers if you lose a Shadow Pokemon and you faint it. That will come later in the game, but during the first section you must catch each Shadow Pokemon that's available. So after recovering from losing the professor, you're then asked by your mother to go to Gadeon Port for a part for the purification chamber that the professor was working on. This chamber will be used later on in the game to actually purify your Shadow Pokemon. What this means is just it turns the Shadow Pokemon back into a normal Pokemon. As you set off for Gadeon Port, you're then escorted by your big little sister Jovi, which is very useful for you, as you then encounter a scary looking man as you enter the port. Thankfully, a man will actually challenge the scary man to a Pokemon battle, and then seems to one-hit him with its Alakazam. But you do notice it was a Shadow Pokemon that is taken out, a Shadow Zangoose to be exact, and we'll see him way later on in the game. After the guy with the Zangoose is defeated, you then can go to the part shop, and you'll see this guy at the entrance. If you talk to him, he'll notice that you have a Eevee, and he'll present you with several shards and stones that you can use to evolve your Eevee. Now this is a pretty important decision for this game, especially for the Professor Oak challenge, as you'll be finding out pretty shortly that Eevee will be a massive part of our team that we'll be using for a pretty long grind coming up soon. So personally, I picked Espeon, which I believe to be best pick overall. After finding Purr, which is actually one of the guys that runs the part shop, we're then given said part and we can go back to the lab, right? Well, there's actually 2 trainers in Gadian Port that we can actually battle for Shadow Pokemon. There's this old man that has a Shadow Ladybug we can snag, but don't worry about his dialogue afterwards. We took his Pokemon for his own protection, right? And then there's this bodybuilder that has a Shadow Poochyena. After snagging both these Pokemon, we can head back to the lab and then progress to the next town, Agate Village. After arriving in Agate Village, we can then go talk to Bella, and as we're talking to Bella, her husband comes back in, named Eugene, and we figured out that he was actually preparing something called the Relic Stone, which is inside the Relic Forest. This is what we'll be using for now to purify our Pokemon. To actually get to the Relic Stone, all we need to do is do a quick few little battles, and it'll help open up our Teddiursa's heart. So what this is any Pokemon we want to purify except one Pokemon we'll get to at the very end of the game. Any other Pokemon, we need to open their hearts by doing things like, for example, running around, fighting trainers, or there's also one other thing, but we won't be doing that too much, which is you use these scents that you can buy that basically just spray off a little bit of the shadowness, I guess. Anyways, after a few other battles, we then are at the Relic Stone, and we can actually purify our first Pokemon, our Teddiursa. After purifying Teddiursa, Eugene tells us to head over to the Mount Battle so we can speak to Vander. As we arrive at Mount Battle, we are then greeted to one of the bodyguards that we saw at Gadian Port. He tells us to make sure to train at Mount Battle. And I promise you, sir, I will be training at Mount Battle. Anyways, after talking to him, we then can fight a couple of trainers before we actually meet up with Vander. And after meeting with him, we learn of a suspicious area that strange people have been coming out of, nearby of Mount Battle. This mysterious facility will actually be the last place for our first segment of this game. And this will be where we catch the final Pokemon and we have to go train them. Anyways, as we arrive on Cypher's lab, we will then meet 6 pretty great guys called the Sextuplets. Each of these guys has a Shadow Pokemon, which is Houndour, Gulpin, Mareep, Spiel, Seedot, and Baltoy. Of course, we have to battle each one of these trainers to snag all 6 of these Pokemon. And after we snag these Pokemon, we can head and enter the actual hideout, which has the remaining snags we have for this section of Spinarak, Numel, Shroomish, and Carvanha. It's important to note that once you have Carvanha you want to leave the lab, because if you continue on the story too much, you will encounter the admin, and then you're going to have to force yourself to wipe if you want to stay in this segment of the game. There is one extra thing we can grab in the lab, but we're going to grab that at the very end of this segment. So with all these Pokemon snagged, we're ready to just go ahead and purify and evolve them, right? And move on? Well, technically, we're actually a few Pokemon short. And you might say, short? I thought we got all the Shadow Pokemon. Well, we have in this segment. Except we're missing 3 non-Shadow Pokemon. You see, in Pokemon XD, the Mount Battle actually has 3 rewards if you complete Mount Battle, which it has 100 different trainers. So trainer number 1 up to trainer number 100. And if you can complete trainer 1 to trainer 100 consecutively without changing your team, you're awarded a choice between a Chikorita, a Cyndaquil, and a Totodile. Which means, if you want Chikorita, Cyndaquil, and Totodile, you have to complete Mount Battle 3 times from Person 1 to Person 100. Also, Person 100 has level 70 Pokemon and legendaries. So, we're gonna be at Mount Battle for a while because our Pokemon right now are like in the teens. Yeah, this is gonna take a little while. So you might be asking yourself, well, how are you planning to fight a couple legendaries and level 70 Pokemon? You know, like what Pokemon are you gonna use that we've caught so far? And actually, I'm only gonna be using 2 Pokemon specifically, Espeon and Teddiursa. Anyways, with these 2, I got set to work, and about 12 hours later from starting Mount Battle, I was able to level Espeon and Ursaring up to level 84. At this point in the run, I was actually on the 99th trainer on a non-consecutive run, so I would not have earned a Johto starter if I beat the 100 trainer anyways, but I just wanted to test my team and see how good could I do against the 99th trainer. Yeah, I lost pretty fast. You see, in my opinion, the 99th trainer of Mount Battle is actually the hardest, or at least the most annoying. You see, she loves to use Explosion, and it's pretty annoying with Explosion, because she'll protect with one Pokemon and then explode with the other one, and Explosion in Gen 3 is pretty strong. If I didn't pick the correct Pokemon correctly that was going to protect, and I doubled up on the Pokemon that was already protecting, I already got exploded on. That probably took a good chunk of my XP away, might have killed me, and then I basically just had to reset. Anyways, since I did fail right here, I thought this was a good time to go ahead and just set my team up and do my first consecutive run to get the first Johto starter out of the way. So with my Espeon and Ursaring ready, and a party of other Pokemon to train, I set out and started from my first Mount Battle. So everything up to like the last few battles was pretty easy, and I'm gonna really skip it because it was just several hours of grinding trainers and getting really no XP. I got back up into the last trainers, and then I was right back at trainer 99, and I lost again. Thankfully though, I did save right before, and you can reset in the Mount Battle as long as you're just continuing on to the next trainer. After resetting one time against her, I correctly guessed which Pokemon was going to protect, and then I just proceeded to double up on the other Pokemon. After this, I kind of played picking which Pokemon was probably going to protect, and then I beat her. After that, there was only one more Pokemon standing in my way between me and a Johto starter. Trainer number 100, or otherwise known as Battle Master Battleless. And also, you might be thinking with his team right now of consisting of a Latios, Latias, Metagross, Salamence, Slacking, and Dusclops, all pretty good Pokemon for Gen 3, you would be thinking that this might be pretty hard for me. Thankfully, my Espeon and Ursaring were already in the level 90s at this point, and his Pokemon are only level 70s, and since my Pokemon were pretty fast anyways, I was able to one-shot his Pokemon without them causing any trouble. And with that, I was awarded the first of 3 Johto starters. Now, all I need to do is make my way through Mount Battle 2 more times, while training up my other Pokemon along the way. The next 2 Mount Battle sections went by even easier to the last one, as my lead Pokemon, Espeon and Ursaring, actually both leveled to level 100 throughout the second Mount Battle attempt. While doing this, I was actually able to evolve everything. This means we can evolve Ladybug into Ladian, Poochyena into Mightyena, Seedot into Nuzleaf, Baltoy into Claydol, Houndour into Houndoom, Gulpin into Swalot, Reap into Flaffy, and then into Ampharos, Spiel into Celio, and then into Walrein, Spinarak into Ariados, Numel into Camerupt, Shroomish into Breloom, Carvanha into Sharpedo, Chikorita into Bayleaf, and then into Meganium, and Cyndaquil into Quilava, and then finally evolving into Typhlosion. And with literally a couple hundred pretty boring battles, I stood in front of Battleless for a third and final time to claim my prize. And I beat him, again first time. Thankfully, after beating him for a third and final time, I was done with Mount Battle, right? Well, not really, because this is actually going to be my training ground for the rest of the game, but at least I'm done meeting Mr. Battleless for the time being. I can grab my Totodile and go evolve him up. After beating a few more trainers, my final Pokemon Totodile evolved into Croconaw and then into Feraligatr, and I was free of this section with a whopping time of 33 hours on the grind. So you'll find out pretty quickly that by far this is the longest segment of the game, and overall, compared to some Professor Oak challenges, this isn't too long, but this still was pretty decent. But looking at our team now, we're not going to have any problems for the rest of the game, I'm pretty sure, because my 2 Pokemon are level 100, and I have several other Pokemon that are in the 30s and 40s, and Lovrina, the first admin coming up, has her Pokemon at level 18. So, after we return to the Cypher Lab and actually knock out Naps, we are ready to take on Lovrina. Kind of. We have one more Pokemon to evolve. In the room that the professor is being held, there is a Pokeball box in the top right of the room. If opening that will reveal a Leaf Stone. We can actually use this to evolve our Nuzleaf into Shiftry. After evolving Nuzleaf into Shiftry, we are now ready to actually complete this segment and take the last Shadow Pokemon of this segment. Another thing I might as well mention now is that all the bosses in this game do have Shadow Pokemon, but none of them evolve. So my stance on it is, any Shadow Pokemon you catch from the admin, I consider it part of the next segment. I don't think it's too big of a deal. All you would probably have to do is just go purify the Pokemon, which doesn't take that much time at this point. After beating Lovrina, we do have her Shadow Delcatty, and this is going to be considered the first Pokemon of segment 2. With Lovrina defeated, it's actually time to move on to the next segment, like I said. We then bring the professor back to the lab, and we're asked to meet with Net in Pyrite Town to uncover the secrets of a data disk that we found at the Cypher Lab. Also, with this segment completed, we now unlock the Purify Chamber, which is actually a way more efficient way to purify your Pokemon, as they can start to be purified while you're not even using them in your party, just as you run around and actually play the game. So this will come in very handy, especially towards the end of the game. So, after leaving the lab, we head over to Pyrite Town. After arriving into Pyrite Town, we can quickly leave again to actually check out a place called a Pokespot, which is a place in this game where wild Pokemon can appear. As Duking will explain, if you leave Pokesnacks at a Pokespot, a wild Pokemon has a chance to come and it will munch on your snacks. He also gives us his handy spot monitor, which will tell us when a Pokespot has wild Pokemon on it. After loading us up with 10 Pokesnacks, we can then set off to the Oasis Pokespot, where Duking again will find us and tell us that if we can find certain rare Pokemon at these Pokespots, he will then trade us rare Pokemon for them as well. Actually, Duking will not be able to trade us so far. It'll be in the next segment of this game, so we don't have to worry about this too much just yet. Anyways, after Duking leaves, we can then hover over to the final Pokespot, the Rock Pokespot, where we will then encounter arguably the best Pokemon character hands down in the entire series, Myra B. Upon arrival, Myra B will then challenge us to a Pokemon battle, and we'll find the next Shadow Pokemon for this segment, Voltorb. After we snag the Voltorb, Myra B will run out, but as he's running, leaves behind a Myra radar, which then can be used to actually track him. Later on, this radar will come in handy. Essentially, if we ever miss any Shadow Pokemon, Myra B will somehow find these Pokemon, and we will have another chance to catch the Shadow Pokemon. This won't be too useful for this segment, but later on it might come in more handy. After finishing up with the Pokespots, we can then head back to the ONBS building, where we'll find out that Cypher has taken over the building. The next Cypher boss is actually at the top of the ONBS building, and we'll have to make our way up there in order to progress to the next segment. Along the way, we'll run into more Shadow Pokemon. We'll be able to find Shadow Makuhita, Vulpix, Duskull, and Ralts, and of course we'll snag them all. With that, we actually have all the Shadow Pokemon for this section. Easy enough, right? But of course we're not done yet, as we have all the Pokemon from the Pokespots to catch. As I said previously, there are 3 different Pokespots, and each Pokespot has 3 Pokemon to catch. So at these Pokespots, we'll be able to catch Sandshrew, Gligar, Zubat, Aeron, Hoppip, and Fanapy for the non-rares. And for the rares, we have Trapinch, Wooper, and Surskit. In the next segment, we'll have to catch another set of the rare Pokemon, but for now I didn't really worry about this. Also, during the grind for these Pokemon, I ran into Munchlax, which will randomly appear at one of your Pokespots, and he'll eat any of the snacks that you leave out. When he does this, his trainer will appear and feel bad that her Munchlax ate your food, so she'll give you another 10 snacks as a way to say sorry. This is actually the only way to gain more snacks in this segment, as we actually can't buy any more Pokesnacks until we beat Exel. Anyways, with all these Pokemon caught, it's time to work on evolving everything again. And side note, I was going to start showing all the purifications, but moving forward, I think what I'll do is any Pokemon that doesn't evolve, I'll just show the purifications, just to kind of show that something's happening with the Pokemon. I always make sure to purify everything before the segment ends, but it's just kind of repetitive to show. Anyways, moving on with the evolutions for the section. We have Voltorb evolving into Electrode, Makuhita into Hariyama, Duskull into Dusclops, Ralts into Kirlia, and then into Gardevoir, Sandshrew into Sandslash, Wooper into Quagsire, Hoppip into Skiploom and into Jumpluff, Fanpy into Donphan, Surskit into Masquerain, Aeron into Lairon, and then into Aggron. This leaves us with 2 more Pokemon to evolve, Trapinch and Zubat. Do you want to guess which Pokemon took me longer? If you said Trapinch, you would be incorrect, as Zubat actually took me a pretty long time to evolve. After a few more hours of tedious grinding, I got my Trapinch evolved into Vibrava, and then into Flygon, and then Zubat into Golbat at level 22, and finally Golbat into Crobat at level 58. Sitting at a time of 44 hours, we have now completed the first 2 sections of the challenge, with a total of 19 Shadow Pokemon caught. Spoilers alert, there are a ton of Shadow Pokemon left to catch. But this challenge won't take too much longer, and you'll see why. Going back into the ONBS building, it's time to take on Exel. After we make our way to the top of the building, we'll be challenged by Exel, which, again, his Pokemon are only leveled 23, compared to the last boss of level 18. He does have a Shadow Mawile, so make sure to catch that. After snagging his Mawile, Exel is defeated and the ONBS is saved. Net will then inform you that from the data disk, he found out that Cypher is actually planning an attack on Fnac City, and he wants you to investigate, which of course you agree to. Before we leave, though, if we go into Duking's building, we'll find out that he has returned, and he will now trade us for the rare Pokemon we can find for his Pokemon. I'll go into these a little bit once we catch them, but first let's head back to Fnac City and take a look at this attack. As we arrive in Fnac City, we're immediately turned away and told to visit the Realgam Tower because somehow we're the 1 millionth visitor to Fnac City. I don't believe this, so I go right back. Making my way back to Fnac City, if you head over to the mayor's office, you'll find that he actually isn't home and his assistant appears to be. The assistant actually will not let you go upstairs, and then you have to go talk to this man on the opposite side of the city and take his music disc from his home, which can then be used to distract the mayor's assistant. While the mayor's assistant is distracted, if you go upstairs in the mayor's office, you'll find a note warning of the upcoming Cypher attack. As you finish reading it, the mayor's supposed assistant comes behind you, and unsurprisingly, turns out to be a Cypher member with a Shadow Pokemon. Shadow Snorunt. After snagging Snorunt, we can then run downstairs to be greeted to another Cypher peon, with, this time, a pine cone for us to snag. When you exit the mayor's building, you'll find that the Hexagon brothers are back, and if you're playing without the Professor Oak challenge, you could use this opportunity to rebattle any of the brothers for their respective Shadow Pokemon. Instead, we're going to head into the Fnac Gym in the middle of the town, where there is a Shadow Natu for us to snag, a Shadow Roselia, and a Shadow Meowth. Also, on the way to Fnac City, there is yet another Cypher member stopping us with a Shadow Swinub to catch. When we go inside of the Coliseum, we'll encounter a Shadow Spearow and Grimer. There is one more Pokemon before the Admin Snaddle, but you'll want to be careful before taking him on. If you take on this trainer, you'll be able to catch his Shadow Seal. However, once you beat him, you'll have to immediately battle Snaddle. So, in order to stay in this segment, I let myself white out to Snaddle, which meant I didn't bring my level 100s to this fight, as that would have taken a lot more time. For the non-Shadow Pokemon in this section, we only have 3. As stated earlier, we need to go and catch the 3 rare Pokemon from the Pokespots again, and trade them over to Duking. This process took me about an hour of attempts, but overall it wasn't too bad to catch the rare Pokemon again. Once you have the Pokemon ready for trading, head back to Pyrite Town, where we can talk to Duking again, and grab our new Pokemon, Meditite, Shuckle, and Larvitar. With these Pokemon, we have all the Pokemon for this section, and yet again are ready for another Mount Battle grind session. For this section, we only have 2 Pokemon that can evolve after being purified, which are Mawile and Roselia. After these, we can then evolve Seal into Dugong, Spearow into Fearow, Meowth into Persian, Natu into Xatu, Pineco into Fortress, Swinub into Piloswine, Snorunt into Glalie, Grimer into Muck, Meditite into Medicham, Larvitar into Pupitar, and then finally into Tyranitar. With a time of 53 hours after this segment, we've completed most of the evolving we'll actually be doing during this run. With another section down, it's once again time to challenge an admin, this time Admin Snaddle, and take his Shadow Pokemon, which happens to be a Shadow Lunatone. With snagging his Lunatone, he quickly runs away and Fnac is saved. We can then use the elevator in the gym and find all of the actual citizens of Fnac. So, after rescuing the people of Fnac, we're meant to carry on with the story, but let me pause for a second. The next section of this game actually has very few things for us to really catch because, spoilers alert, our snag machine is stolen. And instead of showing this segment, I'm just going to kind of skip past it, but just show you the few things we're actually able to get before we get our snag machine back. So during this section, we're able to grab a Firestone from the abandoned SS Libra that we will actually go to, and we can use this on our Vulpix to evolve it into a Ninetales. Also on the Libra, we're able to find this Bonsly, which is actually the second Gen 4 Pokemon that was revealed through this game. We're not able to actually catch this because it's not a wild Pokemon, and it runs away as we try to grab him anyways. We weren't actually trying to catch him, we were just trying to bring him back to his owner. Finally, at the Outskirts stand, we can actually receive a Shadow Togepi for free, with the promise to bring him back after we purify him, which we will. Just to get back into the groove of the game, just know all that really happened is we found the SS Libra that was missing, the Snag Machine was stolen, and then we got it back from Team Snagnum. With that, we can carry on with the story. After receiving the Snag Machine, my Myra radar went off, which meant it was time to see our old friend, Myra B again, and this time snag his Shadow Nose Pass. With Myra B taken down, I also re-challenged Zook, and this time snag his Shadow Pokemon, the infamous Zangoose. With Zook defeated, it's time to storm the plant, except for these massive bodyguards protecting the entrance. Thankfully, Team Snag'em arrives and puts the bodyguards to sleep. With them out of the way, it's time for a snagging montage. Inside of the plant, we will find Shadow Paris, Growlithe, Shelter, Beedrill, Pidgeotto, Tangela, Butterfree, Venomoth, Weeping Bell, Magneton, and Arbok. With this, we have all the Pokemon for this section, and it's time for more grinding. Except for one Pokemon. If you purify the Shadow Togepi that you received earlier and you bring it back to the outskirt, Hordle will actually trade you the Togepi for an Elekid, which I accepted. You'll actually be able to find an Electabuzz in the next section, but because the goal of this is to get the most Pokemon collected per section, it's technically better to trade the Togepi for the Elekid and then evolve it. So let's go over to non-evolving Pokemon for this section. We have Arbok, Zangoose, Magneton, Beedrill, Venomoth, Weeping Bell, Lunatone, Nosepass, Growlithe, Butterfree, and Tangela. Now let's do a little bit of evolving, with Elekid evolving into Electabuzz, Paris into Parasect, and Pidgeotto into Pidgeot. Also, we can use the Water Stone found in the Fnac Coliseum to evolve our Shelter into a Cloyster, but somehow I didn't record this. Anyways, with a time of almost 60 hours, let's take on Admin Gorgon. So Gorgon has two Shadow Pokemon, Primeape and Hypnote, which as usual we make sure to snag. After Gorgon is defeated, the Grand Master of Cypher, Greevil, which of course we met at the beginning of our journey, will appear on the TV telling us to come to Cypher's base in Citadark Isle if you want to stop Cypher. He tells us that it's impossible to reach by a normal boat. Thankfully, if we go back to Gadeon Port, you'll find a pretty unconventional boat there. If you return to the port, you'll notice that the Robo-Kyogre seems to be finished, and it turns out the owner of the parts shop completed it. When you tell him of Citadark Isle, he leaves to prepare the ship for your departure. Before leaving for Citadark Isle, the professor asks us to return to the lab, where he then will give us a Master Ball, which will be very useful for the end of this game. After receiving the Master Ball, it is time to set out for the final area, Citadark Isle. So currently, we have 44 Shadow Pokemon obtained, and Citadark Isle alone has 38 more Shadow Pokemon for us to catch. Thankfully, none of these 38 Pokemon will actually be able to evolve, so all we have to do is purify them. Anyways, on the first floor of the base, you will find a Shadow Golduck, Sableye, Dodrio, and Raticate, before you actually rematch Admin Lavrina. This time, she has two Shadow Pokemon, a Shadow Farfetch, and an Altaria. Moving along, we will then run across a Shadow Banette, Kangaskhan, Magmar, Pinsir, Macargo, Rapidash, Hitmonchan, Hitmonlee, Lickitung, Scyther, and Chansey. With these snags, we move on to the final area of the game. Here, we can then rematch Snaddle, and this time he has a Shadow Starmie and Solrock, and snagging those, he'll once again run away from us. After defeating him, we will then come across one of Greevil's bodyguards, Ardos, and he has a couple of Shadow Pokemon, being the Shadow Electabuzz, Swillow, and Snorlax. I'd also like to mention that Electabuzz will be very useful in the last segment of the game, as he has a Shadow move that actually will cut every Pokemon's HP in half, and this is, again, very useful for some of these last Pokemon, as you'll see soon. Anyways, with Ardos defeated, we're finally able to see Greevil before he puts a glass wall between us, so he can then complete his plan. If we leave the room, we'll actually run into Gorgon, which thankfully shows us that there was an elevator to Greevil. During this rematch, Gorgon will have a Shadow Poliwrath and a Shadow Mr. Mime. Before we can reach Greevil, one final Cypher member is in our way, and he has a Shadow Dugtrio, which we quickly snag, and finally we're at Greevil. Before we can take him on though, we have to take the final admin on, Eldis, and he has 4 Shadow Pokemon, being Shadow Manectric, Salamence, Marowak, and Lapras. Also, just a little opinion, but I really like the character Eldis, and I wish they would have been able to flesh him out more, maybe a 3rd game, but I don't think we'll ever see one of those. Anyways, this means we're technically done with this section of the game. There is 7 more Shadow Pokemon in Dark Isle, but Greevil has all of them. Even though this section requires no training of Pokemon, I thought I might as well go ahead and purify all the Pokemon before we can go ahead and finish off this section. Since I have a full box of ready to be purified Pokemon, I'll spare you the details, but just know I went ahead and turned this box into a box of purified Pokemon in just under 66 hours. And with everything attained so far, it's finally time to take on Greevil. Unsurprisingly, Greevil's first challenge with you is his Shadow Lugia. Now some may choose to use their Master Ball on Lugia, but personally I decided to use it on another Pokemon coming up and just use a couple of Ultra Balls on the Lugia before I got lucky and snagged him. Once we snag Lugia, Greevil realizes that his master plan has failed, but before he allows himself to lose, he'll take you on with a full team of very strong Shadow Pokemon. His team will consist of the legendary trio of Shadow Moltres, Articuno, and Zapdos. He'll also have a Rhydon, an Executor, and Tauros. During this battle, I used a Master Ball on the Articuno, since I didn't use it on Lugia, and they also have a pretty low catch rate anyways, being the birds. And finally, after using several Ultra Balls and Time Balls, and relying on Electabuzz's paralyzing and using his Shadow move to cut their HP into half, we have finally completed this segment. After the credits roll, we then still have the 7 Shadow Pokemon we just got to purify, and then we have 1 more Pokemon to catch. But first, let's go ahead and purify the Shadow Pokemon from Greevil. After running around for about 20 minutes or so, all of Greevil's Pokemon were ready to be purified, and all I had to do is purify Lugia, which to purify him, all you need to do is have your purify chambers, all 9 of them, set to maximum efficiency, and you'll be able to purify Lugia. With Lugia purified, we now have 82 total purified Shadow Pokemon, and we are ready for the final challenge in Pokemon XD. If we make our way back to Gateon Port, you'll notice that the Myra B radar will go off, and he happens to be at the port. If you head to the top of the lighthouse, you'll find a group of dancing Ludicolo, with Myra B also dancing at the top of the lighthouse. Myra B will have with him the final Shadow Pokemon in the game, a Shadow Dragonite. Thankfully, since Myra B does not have any more Shadow Pokemon, catching this Dragonite was actually pretty easy. After losing to us for the final time, Myra B will then take the elevator, leaving his Ludicolo and his crew to have to take the stairs. On the way down, Myra B finds the Myra radar and destroys it, and that's the last we'll see of Myra B, sadly. So now, there's only one more thing to do. After another solid session of running around and actually buying a few cents for our Shadow Dragonite, we are finally ready to purify him. With Dragonite being purified, this challenge is complete with a time of almost 68 hours. So all in all, not a bad challenge, and really the hard part was probably the first 2 sections, but after that, this was pretty smooth. So, how'd you like my first ever Pokemon video? As I am pretty new to this game, feel free to leave anything you want in the comments related to the video. Any way you can. I love feedback. I read every comment I can. So the more feedback I receive, the better the next videos can be. Also, let me know any suggestions you have for future games or future related videos. I would like to do Pokemon only. But with that, I guess I'll go ahead and let you guys go. Take care, everyone.